Welcome everybody to our MasterClass Safety Champion Masterclass series. We're going to be doing a few of these, so you'll be hearing from the Safety Champion team and some of our other sister company representatives from Action OHS as well, and we'll try and bring you some other trusted advisors as well along the journey with you. So today we're talking about ensuring compliance with confidence. And this is a practical session that we're going to be running. I suppose it's not so much focusing on legal requirements, but more looking at the practical application of what that can look like in the workplace, and with the assistance of software as well. So we'll just jump into the next slide. Kat, welcome. Thanks for coming along to this series as well with us. So Kat's here with myself. Kat, do you want to introduce yourself and your journey?
Hi everyone. So just a little bit of background about me. I was a health and safety consultant for quite a few years before joining Safety Champion. And so I've had sort of broad range of experience in quite a broad range of businesses, mostly in hazard identification, management systems, and gap analysis, I guess. So, and then when joining Safety Champion, that background really helped. So I was able to work with clients really well in helping them implement safety into their business through Safety Champion.
Excellent. Thanks, Kat. And I know you and I worked really closely when you were a client of ours. So you were working with your customers to implement Safety Champion. And I think we hit it off so well. I was like, come join us. So it's so good to be working with you. And obviously you've been working with Safety Champion for about as long as I have, which is over 7 years for me now. So I am part of Action OHS Consulting, so one of the principal consultants there in the team. And also I've got the privilege of being the product manager for Safety Champion, which is an exciting role when we're bringing new features to the system, and coming from that safety background, trying to bring those to make them practical tools for everybody working in the safety space and using our software. So we might get straight into it. That's the introduction.
Just quickly before we do, we have a Q&A. We're going to have some questions from you guys after our presentation or after our discussion. But if you do want to ask some questions while we're going, just use that Q&A part in the bottom of the screen to ask questions. And we've got our Safety Champion team are there to answer your questions while we go through as well.
Excellent. Thanks, Kat. So today we are going to talk a little bit about compliance, or the main session is about compliance, but we're going to go and focus on the intersect of due diligence and duty of care. So two, I suppose, duties that sit under health and safety legislation. So we'll talk about that, the challenges in achieving compliance, planning controls, identifying hazards, sharing and communicating information, and monitoring systems and activities. So we're going to jump in with a bit of the legal front first. So Kat, I know you're quite experienced, I guess, in the practical application of due diligence and duty of care, and the differences that I suppose people have to manage that, or how they manage that in the workplace. So we're going to jump in and talk about sort of due diligence. I don't know, are you familiar with due diligence and how that applies in the workplace? We'll jump in and have a look at this. So I might jump through to another, I won't jump through to another slide, but we'll just talk about the intersect of due diligence and duty of care. So basically there's obligations under the Health and Safety Act. So duty of care applies to basically everybody in the business. So there's a duty for workers in the business to have a duty of care about their own health and safety and the health and safety of others. there's duties that are applied to the business in general to identify hazards and manage risks, and we'll go into that in a little bit more detail in a moment. And then due diligence is sort of a newer piece of legislation that's come through, not brand new, but I suppose the application of it through the courts and things is fairly new with the introduction, particularly of industrial manslaughter. So due diligence places specific obligations on an officer. And I know lots of people are like, who's an officer? What does that look like in a business? So there's actually a particular piece of legislation that describes what an officer is in an organisation. And they're somebody that basically has the ultimate ownership of that business, and they have specific responsibilities that are, I suppose, more around making sure duty of care for the business is applied. So they have the requirement to make sure the business is applying processes and applying, keeping up to date with knowledge, knowing what they need to do, all that sort of stuff. So we'll jump into those two differences a little bit in here. We'll jump through. So they can be really confusing in a workplace. So I'm hoping to explain that a little bit to everybody watching. Some of you are definitely like completely understand this in the safety space, but some of our clients may not. It may not be extremely clear to you what the difference is between these. So officers, basically, an officer is determined under the Corporations Act. So like a director in a business. So they're actually signed up basically through the ATO, through your business management system as somebody who has sort of, I suppose, financial accountability in that business, but also generally financial reward for running that business or being part of that business. And they have control over the money that gets spent in the business and also the money that's earned from the business, so the profit. So that's why they hold a duty, the due diligence duty. So the requirements for those officers is to stay informed, so understand their risks. They've got to make sure they allocate resources appropriately to eliminate those identified risks. They've got to manage safety issues. So this is basically they have to establish a process for reporting incidents and hazards and managing those incidents and hazards. So that's a legal requirement. They've got to ensure compliance as well. So that looks like basically making sure what you know should be in place is being implemented and keeping an eye on that. And then another really key one is that they've got to verify the actions, or there's a verification component to that as well. So they need to regularly review and confirm that safety measures are being put in place. So this is why a system like Safety Champion can definitely help. And Kat, what's your experience with, sort of somebody in that officer position? And we'll go into it a little bit more later, but I'd love to hear if you've got any stories of, I suppose, the increased visibility of that implementation of a system via Safety Champion. Have you got anything you want to jump in?
Yeah, absolutely. I think with if you've got a management system in your business and then you use Safety Champion to help implement that, it really helps the visibility of all your tasks, anything that's being reported, inspections. Once it's set, it then is sort of automated through that system. So there's the person that's responsible for it. They can set the tasks and the expectations of the whole workforce, and then that workforce is responsible in their own way. So as an organisation or user who we put this system into place in your business, we then allow those managers and supervisors and employees all the way down to have responsibility of their own. So as a whole workplace, instead of relying on one specific person, that responsibility for safety is spread through the organisation. Yeah, which is definitely what those, as an officer, that's basically your responsibility, is to make sure that you are spreading
that load through your organization and making sure you clearly understand what your business is doing, what hazards they're exposed to and how they're being controlled. Or provide the appropriate resources to make sure that's happening and the appropriate resources to make sure that verification is happening. So we'll jump into the next step, which is what I would probably describe as the more practical part of safety legislation. So, and this is the part that applies to the business as a whole. So workers, contractors, managers, owners, everybody that sits within the business. Basically, this is where your duty of care comes in. So this is the overarching kind of responsibility to basically identify and control hazards. So, there's a requirement to basically provide a safe work environment to prevent harm to people, whether they be workers or contractors or visitors or whoever it may be. So provide and maintain safe plant and structures, safe systems of work, obviously stuff around your substances, so storage and handling of plant and substances. You need to provide necessary information and training, and you need to have an appropriate level of supervision depending on what's being done in the business as well. And then monitoring, obviously, the health of employees. So that'll be a big one that's coming through. We will see probably more improvement notices and more prosecutions potentially related to that monitoring part that sits in legislation. And the reason we'll see more of that is because it's part of one of the controls that comes in around chemical exposures. So we talk about silica. Silica is a big one. You've seen things in the news recently about, 13 workers that were picked up as having silicosis via a monitoring program. So that was part of the monitoring program, which is meant to pick up early detection. But in that case, they already had silicosis from the work that they were performing. So possibly the monitoring needs to happen a little bit earlier. And the more technology we bring in, this is where that monitoring part sits. So monitoring of fatigue in the workplace, monitoring of mental health or other behaviours in the workplace as well. So that's one that I think people should be aware of as well. And it's definitely something Safety Champion can help support a little bit as well, particularly around, monitoring, I suppose, fatigue assessments and looking at stuff like that too. So does that, Kat, have you got anything else to add about sort of that difference between due diligence and duty of care in the work?
No, I don't think so. If anyone's got any questions, feel free to chuck them in that Q&A if we haven't explained something properly, or if you've got a query about anything we've just discussed as well, so we can open that up and chat. If something comes up there. No, I think we're okay.
Yeah, not a problem. And I've spoken mainly about Australian legislation in here. There's obviously a difference between WH legislation and Victorian OHS legislation, but overall, in Australia, but also internationally, workplaces require employers to provide a safe work environment. That's basically what the requirement is. And if you own that business or you're an officer, you have requirements to make sure your workplace is putting systems in place to manage that. So overall, that's probably about it. Challenges in achieving compliance. So Kat, I know you and I, before we came on here, were having a great chat about some of the challenges, and we came up with these as sort of our top 3 challenges to achieving compliance in a business. So did you want to have a chat about some of these?
Sure. So as Janelle said, when we're out and about working in businesses, chatting to clients, even when we're working with Safety Champion or in Janelle's role as a consultant, some of the things we do identify is that, perhaps the business or the organisation has a lack of systems or knowledge in the business. And this could be, for various reasons. We see small businesses that grow rapidly. There's a whole heap of reasons why there might be a lack of systems in place, or And then there's also, you know, someone just gets lugged with that health and safety job. So someone's in health and safety, oh, that's great, you do everything. So that reliance on an individual to manage it all, that seems to be a big one too. And then also that tracking and monitoring of activities. So, you know, quite often there's manual type checklists or notes made or emails sent or just word of mouth. So it's really difficult to try and track what's going on and what's happened. And then if someone leaves the organization, then good luck trying to find, you know, that history of what's happened in that particular space. So these are probably, you know, they're quite basic, I guess, but they're quite a big issue in a lot of businesses for their systems that they're, you know, trying to put in place and manage safety across the board.
Yeah. Yeah. And they seem basic, but, you know, we see it all the time where, people are relying on an individual. And like you said, they leave and that knowledge is lost with them, or your records are lost with that individual. Lack of systems in a business or knowledge is a huge one, as you said. So you can only implement what you know as well. So this is why there's that requirement under the due diligence legislation to actually keep up to date with health and safety knowledge, because ignorance is not a defense. So you can't say, oh, I didn't know that, you know, there's a risk of fall from heights in my roof plumbing business or something. You can't use that as a defense. So you need to get in and you need to understand knowledge externally. So what's going on externally in, I suppose, the safety space or your business space. And then internally in your business, what's actually happening in the business as well. And then that tracking and monitoring, I mean, you would see it all the time when I go out. I see it all the time as well when I go out and audit. And, you know, one example I think of is that, you know, there's a daily checklist required for forklift operation, or there's racking inspections required every 12 months. And, you know, you go into audit and they're like, yeah, we get them done all the time. And then you find that, no, it hasn't been done for 2 years, or, you know, they started off well with the forklift inspections, but nobody checked. So they just stopped doing them. So, you know, that happens all the time. We see it when we audit. We'll jump into the next bit, which is, you know, how Safety Champion software can support those 3 key challenges as well. So, Kat, you're probably coming. Do you want to have a chat, or do you want me to?
Yeah, sure. No, I'm happy to have a chat. So most businesses that we work with, they come to us wanting a software solution, like to manage their safety, so that they're sort of move away from that manual system and that, you know, getting lost in that manual paperwork. And every now and again, we come across a business that comes in, you know, we want Safety Champion to help us manage our systems, but we actually identify that there's perhaps some lack of systems in there. So the good thing about Safety Champion is we do have a sister company, which is Action OHS. So if you're ever at that point where you think that maybe there's something missing, there's always that option to chat to a consultant who can actually provide some sort of assistance in gap analysis and those types of things. But with Safety Champion, if you have got a management system in place, then that can be built into Safety Champion. Everything can get automated. So your inspections, your safety plans, you know, hazards and risks are easy to just put into there. If a worker is identifying a hazard or risk or an incident, you can be safe in the knowledge that those tasks that have been, or those things that have been identified, sit in the system and they have to be closed out by somebody else. So it keeps that monitoring and tracking in the system alive and well, and make sure that is identified through the organization. I think some things that we, you know, sometimes we get some feedback from workers that, you know, oh, we don't bother saying anything because it doesn't go anywhere. So with a system like this, it does allow that all users to have input and to know that what they're inputting into the system will get followed through. I think the way we work with the hierarchy, so it does encourage workers and managers to be involved for exactly this reason, but we can also set tasks as management with expectations. So for those forklift inspections, we can schedule them daily, we can schedule them annually. And if they don't get done, we can have a view over that, and the workplace or the workers in the organization have a responsibility as well. So they can see that their tasks aren't being completed, and so can the organization. But it does give those workers and the workplace managers and supervisors responsibility and an opportunity to get those things done through Safety Champion. And the tracking and monitoring, well, everything that's in there is put in there. So training and licensing, your contractor management, chemicals. Once all that's put in there and there's been review dates set, all those tasks just come up automatically in Safety Champion. There's no, need to go thumb through documents or a diary or try and find your Excel spreadsheet where everything's listed in. Everything becomes tasks in the system, and it makes it much easier to manage across the whole organisation.
Yeah, I think, and we try really hard to make sure, like, we've worked with a number of different systems. I suppose Craig, the director, has also worked with a number of different systems. All of the consultants we work with have as well. And quite often you'll go in and audit a workplace, and there'll be a meeting agenda with a number of actions on it, or a toolbox talk with a number of actions that have been identified that just go nowhere. So they sit on that toolbox talk, and it sits on somebody's desk, and there's one person, an individual that's then responsible for remembering to do that with all their other priorities that are going on. So there's no one spot in a lot of businesses to be able to manage your actions, where something like Safety Champion can come in and support that and take it away from being an individual responsibility. So like you mentioned earlier with that tier structure, we've specifically set it up around a tiered structure. So you have that organisation, that overarching view, and then you can have those individual kind of workplaces or management streams underneath that with all your workers reporting through. So there's, we try and encourage that manager supervisor level to take control of the management system at their level as well. And then bring that oversight to the safety team or the operations manager or owner, whoever is up the top, to keep an eye that things are happening. Or as you said, we've got resources in there ready to go for people, such as templates and things. And we'll jump in and show you some of that in a moment as well. So you've got, you can, at that org level, sort of control what that management system and what that, I suppose, tasks that those teams need to be doing. You can control that from the top, or you can let them kind of manage some of that themselves as well. We also, I personally have worked through universities and things like that, where they produce these forms that you've got to fill in, and they're just complex. Like they have so many fields that need to be filled in. A lot of the time even for myself, when I was younger, I'd have a look at this form and be like, I don't know what the mechanism of injury is. Like, I'm 20. I don't know what that is. I just want to report an incident, and then you'd be blocked because you haven't filled in the right data, or, and then so you just pick something and submit it. So we're aware of some of those behaviours that happen in workplaces because we've been there ourselves. So, and I've, the amount of times I've looked at data and, data's been basically just not valid data because people don't know how to fill in complex forms. So, we've tried to encourage workers to be able to use the system by making those forms for that worker level to be as simple as possible. Obviously, we give businesses the opportunity to add in questions and make it complex if you want, but the base structure is trying to keep it simple so that they can report, they can fill in an inspection, they can sign off a safety plan or a toolbox talk or something. So anyway, we'll continue through. We've talked for a little while. So we're going to do a deeper dive into Safety Champion, but we are, if we can swap screens over in a moment, we're going to just talk about identifying hazards, planning controls. There was something else, communication as well. So sharing information and communication. and also looking at monitoring in the system. So we've got a couple of slides, but we want to jump in and sort of show you the system a little bit as well. So Kat, do you want to make sure you're set, ready to go?
I think I am.
Have a look
You
at the system.
know.
So identifying hazards sounds easy. Quite often, you know, safety professionals particularly will come in and go, I can tell you what all your hazards are. But what you really need is information from the workers and the people who are exposed to those, I suppose, hazards in the business. So you might know your hazards, but you might not know if they're effectively being controlled either. So it's really important that you've set systems up to be able to get that information coming through to the organisation. And we spoke earlier about the due diligence requirements of officers, and that's actually one of those requirements, is to make sure there's a way to report incidents and hazards and that they're managed in the business. So that's one way. So, you know, if you're getting hazard reports or incidents coming through, that obviously means that there's an uncontrolled hazard that's been identified, which is great. But we're starting to move to more of a trend of trying to look at also proactive alternatives as well. So, and our system tries to focus on that by giving you some templates and some help to get there in your business as well. So there's most of the new modules we build or the new features we build are more about that proactive space. So definitely got your sort of hazard and incident reporting. But beyond that, to try and get a system up and running, we need to pick up on those uncontrolled hazards earlier before they cause an incident. So there's a big focus on Kat, I know you could talk about this forever, but inspections and checklists and that process. Do you want to talk about how safety
champion? I think you know, there's really good opportunity for you guys to really control how your people report or getting them to report true data. So with inspections, for instance, you know, a lot of the time, especially with the old manual style tick and flick, you know, people just want to get it done. So they just tick it, yep, it's good, or that doesn't apply, or this doesn't apply. Within this system, when we talk about inspections, we can really modify or control those inspections. So let's say that we've got an area in the business that we're aware of that we need, that's a dumping zone for, you know, boxes and this and that. Like in that particular area or that section in your inspection, you can turn on mandatory attachments. So you can make someone take a photo of that area before they submit that report, or make a comment about it, or, you know, rather than having the ability, or we can turn off NA options altogether, so that, you know, you have to answer, or the person that's completing that inspection has to answer sort of correctly. They've got to put a bit of thought into it. So I really like that aspect of the inspection, so that you can, as a safety person in your organisation, you can identify those areas that seem to get ticked and flicked and really modify your inspections around that, and encourage people to report. And within there, you can report actions from within those inspections as well. So there's a lot of, we can change the way we're writing the questions, we can change the responses, or even the type of answers that we want them to respond with. So I think that inspection module is great for really deep, you know, jumping into those areas of your business that you're potentially concerned about.
Yeah. Awesome. Did you want to jump in? Should we have a look? Yeah, just have a look at the hazard reporting, incident reporting, or maybe even just making sure people are aware of some of those templates that are in the system. So, you know, we definitely, even safety plan templates.
Are we seeing my screen?
Yep, we can see your screen.
Yay. So this is our dashboard. You guys will be familiar with that. If we go into those inspections and we have a look at some templates that are there. So a lot of the templates in this list we've probably created, but Safety Champion have put in place some generic type templates that you guys can go and copy. So if you copy these templates, I think they change a little bit depending on your industry, potentially in your list. So whatever's in your list to copy, you can grab these. You can go in and modify, you know, ones that are set there already. So for instance, we've got this forklift pre-start. It'll be a very generic forklift pre-start. Once it's copied, it becomes yours to modify and do with whatever you like. So if we view that and edit that template, we can go through question by question and look at the answer responses and the, you know, the locations and all this different sort of stuff where we can, you know, modify some of the questions. We can change this to safe or unsafe, or it can be different weighted scores. You can change the weights on your scores, and then you can go into individual questions. And okay, I want to see photos. So we can turn on a mandatory photo and put a, you know, like a note in here that the person conducting that inspection needs to take a photo of whatever it is that we want to take a photo of. So and actions as well. So we can turn them on to optional, where an action may be able to be raised on particular question items.
Yeah, I think that's something really important to point out. Like the action planning in some systems is separated out depending on sort of what tool you're using, but we really try and keep a central like corrective actions register within this system. So no matter where you're picking up those corrective actions from, they'll be coming through from, you know, reactive kind of investigations into incidents, or hazards that have been reported, or they'll come through from things like inspections that you're asking somebody to, you know, verify that, you know, controls are in place, or verify that something's safe, or possibly, you know, asking them about a hazard. So, you know, sometimes with some clients, we set up manual handling discomfort surveys. You set up, you know, you can set up sort of mental health surveys, all sorts of things throughout the system. They might sit in different spots, but you can, you know, you're starting to be able to create that proactive identification of hazards that require actions put in place. So, do you want to show us the action register as well, Kat?
I think the other thing is, you know, with the configuration, depending on what industry you're in, you can really build out those drop down, like the categories and subcategories of what you're reporting onto. So with hazards, for instance, you know, depending on your industry, there might be other types of hazards that you'd like to report on. So we can build those out in the configuration, and then you can start reporting those types of hazards as well. So this is the action register. This will show you all actions that have been reported through the system. And as you know, like there are 2 steps. So the report can come from anywhere. It can come from an inspection or a toolbox meeting or a safety plan or a incident even. We can report these incidents, and then they sit with the workplace or with the organisation, depending on where they've been reported at. And then that responsibility sits with that workplace or organisation to have them signed off. So the report basically states what we want, what's wrong, what we've identified, and what needs to be done about it. And then the sign off is obviously that sign off of that we've put something in place to eliminate or substitute, or we've put signage up, or we've added training, or whatever we've done to reduce the risk of that hazard.
Yeah. Thanks, Kat. We're going to look at planning controls next. So you know, once hazards are identified, this is probably what we've gone into, like we're discussing now, is that idea of planning for implementing controls. But you might identify hazards through other ways, or you might identify the requirement for a particular control from legislation or industry standards or other spaces. So safety plan was probably our original kind of module that was built to help with this. So one thing we've brought, or we have in here, which a lot of you are probably aware of, but we'll just talk through it, which is the idea that you can basically create templates for any of those recurring tasks that need to happen in a system. So I spoke earlier about racking inspections. So quite often when I do auditing, if there is no system in place to remind somebody that an activity needs to be done, so whether they're using a calendar or a system, they will often forget things like racking inspections, or they will forget things like, you know, checking somebody's license is up to date, or really, they don't sound like complex things to remember, but when you're in a workplace, obviously with lots of different conflicting priorities, if you don't have them in a system, it's really hard to remember. So I think, Kat, if you want to switch it back on, I just want to show them in the safety plan module.
My poor old Riverina internet's letting me down. Hang on, it's
Oh,
there
okay.
now. It's all right, all good. Yeah. Can you see that again now?
Yeah, so if you want to jump through and just have a look at some of those, like we have in the inspection module, we've got templates that you can copy in here as well.
This is actually something I learned yesterday. And so the safety plans changed a little bit. So we're able to put categories and subcategories in there. And we're also able to put custom fields in. So if you have, extra questions or data that you want to gather from these safety plans once they're signed off, we can add them in. So, but what I learned yesterday is that even though we add them in here when we're creating the template, it's not until that sign off that you can view them and answer those questions. So just a note to everybody. So
yeah, so that's sort of a new feature to bring that older module in alignment with the rest of the system. But basically we have templates there ready to go. So it's worthwhile, if you haven't already, is to just go through and have a look at some of those templates. So there's things like asbestos register, which a lot of businesses, until they've had a safety professional come in and support them, a lot of businesses don't understand that if there is that risk of asbestos in that building, then they do need to do a review. They need to mark it. They need to keep a register and review that every 5 years. So there's a few other things in legislation as well that's required. So we try and have, I suppose, safety plans in there that help you understand some of those duties. We can always add more in there, but you can add them in yourself as well. So when you do if you do annual planning reviews, or you have a meeting to discuss what needs to be done for the year, it's really a good idea to jump into the safety plan module, or there's a couple of other modules we can talk about as well, but it's a good idea to jump in and put them in the system and put a due date in for those particular activities. So particularly, Kat, in here, I'd love to talk about the allocation process. And so if you have 5 different buildings or 5 different workplaces that require, so maybe you have a different state, you've got businesses in different states, there's things like evacuations, trials and drills that you need to run. Asbestos registers need to be collected. Racking inspections need to be done. They may not all be doing them at the same time. So the beauty of this system is that you can create that one task at the organisation and then allocate that out to the different workplaces on different dates. So they can all be due at different times and be running, those workplaces can be running their own kind of cycle of completing those activities. But at the org level, or that organizational level, you'll define what that frequency looks like, and then you can monitor that. So that helps you, rather than having multiple names for things, multiple kind of tasks in the system, that can be managed at one level to create like an easier way of keeping track of those tasks. So do you want to just...
And I think too, the other good thing about it is that, we can build it once. Whoever's responsible for safety can build it once. And then when that's allocated to those workplaces, it becomes 5 different tasks. It becomes 5 different individuals. But then when you're looking at the history, or you want to, look at what's happened in for a particular task, like asbestos or like a fire evacuation, when you look at the history, it all comes back together for us to view what's been done where, when. So it's a really good way of tracking what's happening through your organisation. I really love the scheduled stuff. I think scheduling, as much as you can in regards to inspections and safety plans, all of that sort of stuff. I would schedule as much as you can, and then it's so much easier for you guys to track and monitor.
Yeah, particularly when there's sort of limited resources for managing safety in a business. If you can allocate out that responsibility to, the person who might be running that particular area, to keep an eye on those activities, or I suppose manage those activities, it can definitely support the process. So even stuff like A lot of the time, businesses don't really know when maybe their fire systems have been audited, except for when they get an invoice in, and that might go to finance and the safety person never actually finds out about it or can't monitor it. So having somebody local tasked with, when the person comes to check the fire systems, go in and take a photo of their report, put it in the system, so we can keep track of that actually being completed. So, because quite often, sometimes businesses go out of money or go out of business. The contract may end, they may not continue an engagement. So something that you'd had set up with an external party to maintain may fall over for some reason, and you may not be aware of why that's happened or when it's happened. So by having those tasks in the system, even though they're being externally managed, it gives you that due diligence, dare I say, of ensuring that that task is actually being completed. So this is the safety plan module. You can allocate to different dates depending on what workplace you're looking at. You can deallocate when it's no longer required. So you can have sort of some activities happen for, 1 week or every week for 3 months or something. I think of like bushfire requirements that only happen at certain times of the year. There might be maybe flooding risks or other risks that you need to manage at different times of the year as well. So you can activate those tasks for certain periods as well, or you can just have them in the system ready to go on that recurring task. So the other areas of the system where we have that proactive planning is sort of in your inspection modules. So once again, you can have ad hoc inspections in there, or you can have those recurring inspections, the same way the safety plan module works. Or within the risk module, so we've got the corporate risk module there, which some people may be using, some people may not be using, but basically you can, once you've identified those hazards in a business, so Kat, maybe go and jump into corporate risk. This is our demo site, so we'll see. It's just the risk module.
Oh, I have found it.
Yeah.
Don't mind me.
So this is basically your overarching corporate risk register. So you can jump in here and list out those risks or hazards you've identified and what controls you expect to be in place. Review that level of risk, and then obviously create your action plans around it. And the idea is a lot of businesses, when they've got safety systems in place, will review these annually or maybe every 3 years, depending on what the actual risk is. But you go through and you document those known hazards in a business, and then you go through and document what those controls should be in place. And then the idea is when you review them, you go and have a look at legislation, you go and have a look at industry, you go and have a look at any legal cases or, any court cases that have gone on to maybe explain what you should have in place, what that duty should look like around that particular hazard. Or, if you're unsure how to review those, that's what Action OHS does. And some of our partners also offer those services, which is risk review sessions, where we, bring a team of workers together and review those risks and look at those controls in place and make sure it's actually what's happening in the workplace. Because quite often we like to put ideas of what's happening, what controls are in place. So and that's when that action planning can come out of this module too. So you can start to look at creating actions when you do those reviews, or if there's been an incident, you might come and review your risk as well at that point. We've also got contractor management in there, training management as well. So, and I noticed the time, we're definitely running off.
Yeah.
The other thing I wanted to talk about was sharing and communicating information, which is another thing that we do in here. So we've got probably the 3 main modules where this is done is the notice board module. So where you can share information, it behaves like a digital notice board for you. There's also a form system in there, which has been set up to be kind of a confidential form. So the worker can decide who they want that form going to, and an email goes through to that particular person. So it might be like you can use it like an ideas or an issues box that can be managed, or maybe I'm just trying to think, some of the stuff that we use it for might be, you know, you've got an event coming up and you need to kind of, I don't know people's t-shirt size and a few other things for marketing or whatever you might need. So there's sort of a form in that system. It's probably not the safety side of it, but the idea was to create sort of a confidential process for communicating issues and things in there too. So the communications module is great as well. We've got clients using that to communicate either induction information, onboarding information for contractors, safety alerts that need to go out to workers. Kat, have you got any other practical ideas you've got?
I think a lot of people use them for inductions and those types of things as well. So, and you can also build forms in here too. So if you have your content on a template, you can have your declaration on a form, send it out to your employee or contractor or whatever. And then you've got that link in there, either HR record or their contractor record, and you can see those communications that have been sent out. So I think the communications module is great.
Yeah. I know a few clients that use it for consultation purposes as well, which is also a duty in the business. And so they, like, if they're changing systems or reviewing documents, they'll put those documents into that communication template, send them out to all the workers, and then they have the feedback form built in. So they capture all that feedback from workers and on their consultation as well. So that's one way that people are looking at sort of implementing change management and consultation. Notice board as well. I think you've probably looked at that before. The visitor module. So there's actually a module for sort of site sign-in, and there's templates in there to be able to share information to people that are signing into site. So if you need to give them an induction video, or you need to give them critical information like emergency contacts and emergency management when they sign in, that's all set up around that same template structure around sort of communicating information. Plus also there's forms in there too, so you can collect information from those people that are signing in to the site too. We might jump in and go and have a look at the dashboard. So just the next thing we were going to talk about was monitoring the system and activities. So the dashboard in the system is designed for when you basically come in, that you can see all those tasks on your dashboard. So they sit there. So no matter what module they come from, if there's a task that needs to be completed, it will be sitting on that dashboard. If you've got permissions to see it, obviously there's permission controls in the system, but you'll be able to see who they're assigned to, whether they've been completed, what workplace they belong to, all that sort of stuff. You can also see your full history, your sign-off history there as well. So you can see all those activities that are being signed off. You can see whether they're being completed on time visually. You can also see, even though somebody might say it was completed on time, that maybe it wasn't actually signed off in the system on time. So we sort of track both of those requirements or dates, I would say, in the system. When somebody signs off a task, they can say when it was completed, but if they haven't actually updated the record until much later, it will also show that in the system as well. Might jump into some of the reporting pages as well, Kat.
You want to go into here?
Yeah, so yep, into the reporting pages. We can go in and have a look at incident, yeah. So there'll be some changes coming through soon. We're actually releasing the frequency rate reporting. So there'll be a function that you'll be able to access in the system. So I'm sure Kat's customer success team will reach out or will notify you when that comes into the system as well, which will be exciting. Lots of clients have asked for it. So this is just basically you've got a view of your reporting in here. I think probably one of my favorite features, Kat, maybe jump into the action module and I'll just show you, and maybe you can talk through some of your favorite features. Sorry, the action reporting page.
Sorry. Where are we going?
The drop down up the top. Just change to the action one. No, higher up. Yeah, that one.
Sorry.
Just
No.
above there.
Where am I going?
You can go back to the module or above that where it says incident.
Oh, here.
Yeah.
Sorry. Now still, hang on a sec. Get the right one. Right.
Yeah. So what we spoke about earlier in the action module was talking about the where your actions are coming from. So if you scroll down, Kat, one of the elements in here, hopefully it's in here, is this one, which is, linked actions by module. So you can start to see visually whether your actions are coming through from sort of more proactive activities or reactive activities in an organization. So incidents, obviously, you can start to track that, where those actions are coming from, incidents or safety plans or inspections, or directly coming into the system. So it's probably one of my favorite elements of reporting in here. Anyway, have you got anything else to add, Kat?
No, I think a big thing, we get a lot of support requests around understanding the reporting. And I would say to everybody, just get in there and have a play with it and actually try and work out what you want to know. Because really, like Janelle said, these types of things, if you can break them down and say, okay, these are our direct actions reported, and these are the ones that are coming from the incident module, you can start to sort of identify, as Janelle said, the areas of our business we may need to expand. So if you've got a lot of others, like there's sometimes we'll have other in as actions. And so if you've got a big percentage of, actions that are other or incidents that are other, then maybe we start looking at the configuration and building out that other so that that data is meaningful. So it might be a different category that we need to add into configuration to make your data a bit more meaningful. So just get in there, be curious, and obviously reach out if you need some support around that. But we are building some learning materials around the reporting modules as well.
Yeah. And we're about to release some additional reporting pages as well for the other modules. So, but yeah. Oh, good. Sorry, everyone. We'll finish up. If anybody's got questions, we can actually probably send out some answers, but if people want to stay on, happy to. Not sure, Megan, if there's any questions.
There have been questions, Janelle, but we've answered as we've been going. So we can double back on those as a team later on.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody who's still on, or those people that had to leave a bit early. Sorry, we were going to 10:45, but Kat and I can talk forever.
Yeah.
Sorry. If anybody's got any other questions, or we can obviously there's training packages to help you understand the system a little bit more, so you can have the lovely Kat come and join you, or Megan, or the rest of the customer success team. Or if you need some more help in understanding those health and safety duties, particularly around due diligence and what that looks like for you as an officer, or duty of care, what that looks like for the business, we run those sessions as well. So reach out if you'd like to have a look at anything like that. Thank you, guys.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate you coming along.
Thanks, Janelle and Kat. Appreciate